Welcome to Tunnel Vision. I am Adam Connor-Bourne from the USA. We have David Scarcella. David, great to have you on Tunnel Vision. How are you, mate?
Great. Good to be back. Coming to you from all the way in New York this time. So I'm making my way around the
Wow.
US, which is fun.
What a lovely trip. I mean, it looks like you've had an amazing time. All the clips that you sent through for Tunnel Vision, seen by hundreds of thousands of people at this point, it's looked absolutely incredible. Starting us off there, you've obviously followed the Socceroos all around the tournament. I just want to know, from a fan perspective, how has it been in the US? How have you found it? And how has the tournament been for you and your family being there following Australia?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting experience. I think it's far exceeded any expectation prior to coming over here. And there's probably three key factors, I would say, when I look at from a fan's perspective, from a media perspective, where it's been exceptional, really. I think first and foremost, what really stands out when you're over here is the level of infrastructure and the hospitality from the US. I think the US sometimes get a bad rap in terms of, they're loud and obnoxious and they're rude. We've found it total opposite. The level of hospitality and how polite and how patient the US are in terms of hospitality, match day experiences, bar experiences, police at games has been exceptional. I think there's a lot to learn, especially from an Aussie perspective in terms of how they've done it. Whether they put it on for the World Cup, not sure, but it hasn't felt like that. It's felt like it's been genuine, really good people, and just been a pleasure to be here. And that's really coupled and matched the infrastructure. I mean, the infrastructure here is by far the best in the world. Every stadium is, cutting edge. You've got state of the art. There's no lines to get in, no lines to get a beer or get a hot dog. It's been phenomenal from an infrastructure point of view. And really that just adds to the whole experience. So I think first, hospitality and infrastructure has been great. The overall friendliness of the locals and how they've been received, there's been no problems. It's been excellent. And third, to top it off, has been the Australian support over here. And it's been, really an amazing experience. The last time I was with the active support for Australia was in 2006. And to see it grow and evolve since then is a real credit to the Aussies that have come over here. And, like the active support group that have created that atmosphere, organised pre-match venues, made it really easy to get to, has created the most amazing vibe and experience. And yeah, that was the biggest disappointment about, not making it to the next round against Egypt, is not having that to look forward to, because it's almost as good as the game, the whole pre-match singing and experience. So all in all, on a greater viewpoint, on a macro viewpoint, I think it's been an excellent tournament. As an Aussie supporter, it's been a joy to be here.
Of all the cities that you went to, did you have a favourite one? I must say, I lived in San Francisco for 6 months a few years ago, and I loved it there. But I heard it wasn't the best fan experience from the people that have been. If there's anywhere that you really stood out to you of all the places that you watched Socceroos.
Yeah, I think Vancouver was definitely a standout. And it's all, no matter what sporting events you go to in the world, when you've got the stadium right in the city centre, it just adds another element. So you've got 10,000 Aussies in this taking over the streets of Vancouver, bars, restaurants. So just creating that awesome atmosphere and vibe. And then there's a march to the ground, and then you're a march back. So I think Vancouver was a very nice city. It was a friendly city, and it was just that whole element of the stadium being in the city was just a great experience. In saying that, albeit the stadium was a bit further out of San Fran, it was great to experience central San Fran and then out further to the stadium, which was about an hour out. But listen, the US is so big. Canada is so big. There's always something to see, always something to do. And the infrastructure, like I said, is just phenomenal. At every stadium, you've got bars, you've got restaurants, you've got big screens. So from an experience point of view, none of them were poor. They're all excellent. But for me, Vancouver just stood out as a little bit special.
I mean, Walmart will never be the same. So if we move on to the kind of footballing side of the Australian experience at the World Cup, we had 2-0 win against Turkey, a 2-0 loss against the USA. a 0-0 against Paraguay, which I think, although you kind of come at that 0-0, was actually a very good game. And we've discussed at length on a previous pod. And then you had that loss and that exit of the World Cup to Egypt on penalties. I'm just wondering how you feel about the experience and whether it was a success from a footballing perspective in the World Cup.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look back at our situation in the group, where we finished off, yes, disappointing not to progress to the next stage, but as a whole, quite successful. And I think it's a shame that the media and a lot of the feedback has been quite negative on the back end of our exit. But really, when you look at it, huge win against Turkey. I think a lot of people, especially the Australians, underestimate how good a side Turkey was. For me, they were still the best side in our group. And I think if they beat us, they go on to win the group. And they showed that against the US. And they absolutely dominated Paraguay. So people need to understand that was a huge result for us. And really, when you look at the stats, defensively, we were great, but we probably didn't deserve to be finishing that game 2-0. So huge bit of success for us, and in terms of how we got through the first game. US, I think, when we look at it, there's two things that really take the varnish off and tarnish what we've done here at the World Cup. That first half against US was a big disappointment. I think more so from a tactical and setup perspective. That first half against US was an absolute disaster. And then the game against Egypt with the change with Matty Ryan probably took, again, really the shine off what we had achieved. So as a whole, I think a good performance by the Socceroos. I think we had a really young side. We've got a really good spine going forward, excellent defensively, really young defensive unit. And I think you can add to that. I think there's a lot of positives to take out of this World Cup.
For me, the kind of standout is that youth. I think the team is a young team, and there's only going to be build upon that youth. Looking forward, there's a very bright future for Australia. I think there's just needs to be a build upon. I don't think it's an unsuccessful tournament. I think you could make quips about individual moments that maybe had an overblown outcome because of the importantness of them. But yeah, generally, I think it was a good one. I think the youth, though, is the really exciting bit for me. A lot of that team is very young and inexperienced, really. And I think outperformed that Turkey game. Well, I think one of the highlights of the entire World Cup from any team across anything. Just thinking about the Australia team again and the youth element, where do you think Australia needs to go from this from a kind of like federational perspective? And where do you think, how do we build upon it just to make sure that this, and there is a big support element back at home. How do you think we keep that going? How do you think we keep the game thriving back at home, not just during this World Cup period?
I think the biggest problem with football in Australia is how fractured it is, and it's really it's very simple. It's fractured because from a top-down perspective, it's disjointed. So if you look at any government, any sporting organisation in the world, if you don't really have that level of support from top down, you're always going to get disgruntled audience, and that's what we have in Australia. It's a ununified, disgruntled community, everyone trying to do their own thing, probably not supported by government in the same way. And there's been a lot of talk about how the government should be stepping in, providing more funding. But as a whole, we're a disjointed unit, right?
Yeah.
It's to the same level of how the A-League is supported. You know, it's a shame and actually disgrace. Everyone talks about, like we need to do more, but it comes down to the individuals. As individuals, we need to understand how important the A-League is. I think 19 of the 24 players that have are products of the A-League within the last 2 or 3 years, right? Without the A-League, without a thriving A-League, it makes it really difficult to provide this pathway for young kids in Australia. So for me, you get these fair weather supporters that come out and support the Socceroos when they're there. They need to come out and understand the A-League is a good product. The players playing with the A-League are good players, and we've seen them match some of the best players in the world at this World Cup. And people and kids and parents and families need to get out and support the A-League clubs. And the FFA and the A-Leagues and all the clubs need to do much more to engage in our local communities, to provide more value for our local communities, to engage our local communities, and to bring it together to make it a unified engagement to make all areas of our sport in this country thrive. Because at the moment, because it's so disjointed, it doesn't have the ability to thrive. So I think that's a big thing. I think everyone talks a good talk, but it's time to start doing, and it's as small as little things like get off your seats, get out to an A-League game, and get out to an NPL game, and support the game of football in our country at all levels.
I've watched football, I've watched academies, and I've watched youth all over the world, especially in Asia and Europe. There is the best infrastructure for youth in Australia that I think I've ever seen. That's not in any way like overblowing it. I don't think I've ever seen pathways as should be open as they are in Australia. The infrastructure is incredible. The pitches are incredible. The ability for people to do well within their environment seems incredible, but there is a disjoint. And I think that's where we need to address really for that going forward. And I think you are completely right. It starts at that fractured sense and like repairing those fractures within the game and between the A-League and the Federation. And I think it starts with people understanding that it is potentially the most important sport for Australia over the next 15 years. It's the biggest sport globally.
There's no other sport. And if you look at the footage back home, and if you look at the amount of supporters that have come here and supported every game, traveled across from Canada through to the US, and would have kept traveling and supporting the team wherever it went, there's no other team, not rugby, not cricket, definitely not AFL. There's no other team that does it to this extent. So it's great. You know, we can talk about it. We can get on the bandwagon, but it cannot stress enough how people need to stop just talking about it, stop rubbishing our game locally, because we've shown that the quality of our boys are as good as anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And we need to start talking well of the A-League and getting out and supporting it. And everyone needs to be together to ensure that happens. The amount of conversations I have with people that rubbish our A-League, and these are people that have never stepped foot outside to watch a game outside of Australia, is shocking. And it's an absolute shame, and it shows that level of naivety and probably a little bit of arrogance to think that our A-League can be rubbish in the way that it is. So hopefully this World Cup has shown that we've got quality in the A-League, and it makes people get off their seats and get out to stadiums, because a packed stadium in the A-League, whether it's an Adelaide United game, a Melbourne Victory game, a Brisbane Roar game, getting 15, 20,000 out in these games, it's amazing. And I think that's all we're missing. So yeah, hopefully this showing at the World Cup really spurs on the game back home.
Looking into the round of 16 where we are now, I think we saw arguably the game of the tournament of England versus Mexico. I was wondering if you could just talk me through your thoughts on that. I mean, as an England fan, I am completely biased, but from where you're sitting, David, what's your opinion on that game?
Yeah, listen, I think Mexico coming into that game had shown exceptional quality. It was played at the Azteca, high altitude, 82,000, I think, Mexicans. Obviously, the English had their contingent, which they always do, but it was always going to be a tough game. And I think England applied themselves really well. The red card definitely made it harder for them, but into business, they went there. I think their big players performed. I think Stonesy came on and did really well. And I think Bellingham obviously had a great game. And Harry Kane, again, just, you know, he's everywhere. And did the business. So I think that was a difficult game for England, and they probably knew it, and really a good one for them to get under their belt now as they go to exert themselves on this tournament now in the business end of it.
I'm just going to do this as an absolutely non-objective England fan. Do you think we look convincing? I don't know. I don't think we look convincing. Like, I agree. Big players stepped up. Jude Bellingham had an incredible game. Harry Kane he's got to be Ballon d'Or up there for this year, surely. The amount of goals he scored, but I just didn't think the team looked convincing. I don't know. I'd just be interested in what you think.
I don't think England have been convincing at all through this World Cup. I think they've been probably one of the most underperforming teams at this World Cup. When you look at their team on paper, definitely underperforming. They've looked disjointed. But what we've seen in World Cups of the past is that sometimes the teams that look really disjointed early just need that little spark somewhere along the tournament, and then they kick on and do what they need to do. So yes, disjointed. I totally agree. They've looked very poor up to this stage. I don't think they were amazing and dominated the game. Difficult circumstances. But I think it was good to see them turn the page a little bit and dominate in areas that mattered. So, I think this could be a little bit of a turning or a cornerstone for England as they go to, hopefully, I'd like to see England, go very close in this one.
Yeah, well, same. I mean, it's coming home, sure. Just on underperforming teams, we saw Belgium defeat the USA 4-1 in the final game of day. Oh my God. I'll start
Hold
that
on,
entire game again.
just on the England versus
Oh, of course. Yeah, please.
before we move on, just the England versus Mexico game
No.
again.
Yeah.
And we talk about the level of quality in the A League and in Australia. I think a big shout out needs to go to Ali Razi Fagani for his refereeing performance. He's an Australian referee, referees the A League day week in, week out. The assistant referees were also from Australia. So that when you look at all the games that I've watched, it was the most intense game. It was the most hostile, and he delivered perfectly. So again, we don't talk enough about the positives that come out of Australia. For me, that's a hot as an Australian, the way he delivered himself and represented our country in that last game in impeccable style was a big highlight as well for me. So a big shout out to him and his team, and again shows the quality we have right across the board in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he looked after himself well and in a very difficult circumstance. That stadium looked, not from just a playing perspective, from a fan perspective, hostile. And we've seen how many times referees over the years have been affected by those kind of crowds, never, let alone 89,000 people in the middle of Mexico. Talking about underperforming teams, Belgium defeated the USA 4-1. There was obviously a lot of controversy around this game and a lot of talking points that were not the football. Belgium really seemed, before we get onto the US, Belgium really seemed to have, from a poor start, hit a bit of form recently. They obviously came back very, very late against Senegal and now have taken it over. I just wonder if you could talk to Belgium a little bit and let me know your thoughts on where they're going. They seem to me like they could potentially be an outsider's chance or an outsider's team at this point.
Yeah, I think they qualified really well for this World Cup, Belgium, and agreed they've probably looked a little bit disjointed up until this stage and haven't really shown their best form. But I think today against the USA, there was an absolute professional performance. I think US made it easy for them at critical points in the game. But yeah, they looked slick. They looked well organised. They made it very hard for the US to get in and behind, and they had enough quality up front when they needed it. So again, a little bit similar to, and I thought maybe US, with what I'd seen from Belgium up to this stage, maybe US could have, you could argue, had the upset, even though they're the host nation, and gone through. But a bit like England, they've turned it on when they've had to, and they got the job done in a very professional manner.
Story of the tournament so far is probably Florian Balogun. He obviously did play after having his red card suspended from FIFA. I just wonder if you could talk to me what your thoughts are on that. It's been very, very badly received by the majority of the world's footballing press. I just want to know, as a fan on the ground, what your thoughts are.
Hey, listen, I think it's overplayed a lot. I mean, it's hilarious, actually. Trump's, I know for a matter of fact that FIFA doesn't have any influence politically, especially when it comes to football-related decisions. And I think Infantino responded perfectly. There's an independent judiciary that makes decision on all these type of things. I actually think it's quite refreshing that something as blatant as this has been pulled up, and it was the wrong decision for him to be red carded, and to really not allow someone to go through and play in an important game, which it was against Belgium in the round of 16 today, would have been quite unfair because it was that far away from being a red card, and VAR didn't pick up on it, which is a failing. That I think it's refreshing that FIFA did rescind it and did allow him to play. Did it have an effect on the game at all? No. So I think us media guys, we love to talk these things up and we love to make rules. It gives us stuff to talk about. But I think personally, it's quite refreshing to see FIFA admit fault and turn it and give the kid a chance to play.
Yeah, I mean, if you get away from the FIFA involvement, I think that the inability to appeal a red card feels quite wild to me. I know that there's been a lot of talk about when Wayne Rooney got a red card, he could reduce the issues by training with under 21, so on and so forth. But the fact that at a very closed tournament where you've got an incredibly limited amount of time, you can't appeal a red card, regardless of whether it was warranted or not, that feels very disjointed to me. And regardless of what anyone thinks about the situation, rightly or wrongly, having a suspended red card enacted, I think the fact that you cannot appeal that red card creates the scenario where this controversy can happen, basically. Friend of the show, Shane Smelts, has described Norway as his dark horse or his outside team of the tournament. We saw them beat Brazil, I think quite convincingly, relatively recently. I just wondered if you kind of share the same opinion that Norway are a dark horse, and then back onto England, they play England in the next round, how you see that game playing out, whether you think England are in trouble or Norway potentially in trouble for a sort of star-studded, stacked England side.
Yeah, we very rarely agree on a lot of football topics, but this one I'm going to have to agree. I think Norway look very well organised. They come with a big following, a lot of Norwegians over here supporting them. And then you've got that man Haaland, and he takes, you got to understand from an opposition perspective, if you look at every time he gets the ball in around the box, he's got 1, 2, definitely 2, maybe a third with an eye. So he gives that freedom for others in that final third just because of how dangerous he is. So when you look at them from a balance perspective, they qualified perfectly for this World Cup, and they've gone into every game very well organised. Haaland's a huge threat, and I definitely think they're a smoky for it. I see them potentially going all the way.
Yeah, they look really good. And I do not think you can underestimate Haaland in this game. We've spoken a lot about this being a striker's World Cup, and he is the striker, I would say. You can make arguments about Messi and Mbappe, but I think he's the striker, maybe more than Harry Kane in one way or another, because of the amount of firepower that Harry Kane has behind him and talent Harry Kane has behind him relative to Haaland and Norway. Just talking about those strikers, we saw France go the distance again against Paraguay, a very, again, not necessarily controversial game, but a game that Paraguay were kind of slated in for some dark art stuff. But Mbappe does the business again. He looks great. I would say France, to me, currently look like the favourites. I think that's how I've kind of seen it at the moment. I'm just wondering if you agree, and if there's you got any ideas around France being the favourites versus Spain, who we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah, I think, again, on that Paraguay performance, it shows the quality that Paraguay had. They're solid, they go at it hard, they're dirty, they roll their sleeves up. And I think France almost have to be at their best to overcome that, and it could have gone to the death, right? But yeah, France have been solid. Again, they've got Mbappe there, who's looked good. He's finding the back of the net. They're looking to always play the ball forward in that final third. So yeah, I think they've been excellent to watch. They've looked very well organised, and they've got that quality all over the park. So are they I know on paper and the way they've gone about themselves, are they a favourite? Yes, not my favourite.
Okay, nice. And then finally on to Spain. Spain are the only side in this World Cup yet to concede a goal. They beat Portugal 1-0 in a relatively poor but still an interesting game. You're obviously a man who's defended goals his entire life, and being the only team to concede. I think everyone spoke about Spain being tiki-taki and playing this wonderful attacking football. Yeah, it's the defensive side that I think is doing it for them at the minute. Do you think that's a bit of a weapon for them? Do you think that above all the other teams, for them to be the one that Spain to be the team that hasn't conceded, that brings them into a bit of a league of their own?
I mean, this is a big contradiction to the Spains of the past, right? Where it's tiki-taka, it's always trying to play at all costs, conceding 3 but scoring 4. I mean, that's the Spain that we've really seen develop. Definitely the Spain of old, and it's still stayed with them for every other World Cup. But we're seeing a different Spain this time round, and they're going about their business quietly. So I think for me, they're the favourites. Again, they've got quality all over the park, and they probably defensively look the most solid out of all the teams at the World Cup so far. And Portugal never really threatened them. I think for Spain, it was quite comfortable. Have they struggled to really create as much as some of the other teams have? Maybe, but they've counteracted that with an impeccable defensive display.
Onto the quick fire questions to you, David. I'm just wondering if you give me a high moment of the tournament from where you've been following the Socceroos around.
I think I'm going to be hard to put it to one, but if I give you three quick high moments, definitely first one has been part of the Aussies active support group. Atmosphere is unbelievable, makes you wanting to come back to the next one. I can't wait to get to the next World Cup, and the guys that have organised it have done an amazing job. So that for me is, from an Australian supporter perspective, big shout out to the boys at the Australian Independent Supporters Group. Uh, and every Australian that was over here supporting the team. I think it was created an electric atmosphere, and definitely unique with our Aussie bogingness over here, which was a lot of fun. I think other high point for me was beating Turkey 2-0. Again, everyone underestimates how big of a performance that was. People forget very quickly, as we all do. But when I look back on it, and the quality that Turkey had, for me, that was huge. A lot of our team coming into their first World Cup, so I think that's a big high moment for me. And the third one was really just showing our, and we keep talking about it, it's the A League showing, and the contingent of A League players and products that we've showcased at this World Cup. And then we've spoken about and the Razor Fagani, his performance. So we're really representing Australia really well, and I hope that resonates back home and everyone again jumps on that support bandwagon and gets behind it. So for me, they're three high moments.
Just to kind of counteract that, the low moment or low moments, please.
I think definitely the lowest. So I'll give two low moments. One was that first half against the US.
Yeah,
Set up
understandable.
totally wrong, and we were just off it. So that for me was a big disappointment. I think we're a better footballing side than them, and I think they were for the taking. And the second one, as a keeper, seeing that change in the last minute with Matty Ryan coming on,
Yeah,
I think Beachy had done everything perfect. He had represented himself exceptionally well, and he deserved every right. I don't know why Popper made the decision. Listen, only he knows why. I don't think even the players know by everything that's come out. But for me, big as an ex-keeper, really disappointing. More disappointing for the kid that didn't get a chance to kick on and really continue that form. And disappointing for Matty Ryan to be put in that position. But again, what's come out, I don't think he really wanted to be there at the end in that penalty shootout. So that for me was a really low point.
yeah. And then going on to that, your Australian player of the tournament, please.
I'd probably have to say Beach has been probably for me, under all the circumstances, exceptional, kept us in the game at big moments, didn't really make any mistakes. So yeah, and big Harry Suter drinks the vodka, sips tequila. For me, he was exceptional as a captain. Again, don't want to look too much at the penalty shootout, but he was rock solid. And as a whole, all the young kids that came through, but those two in particular have been my Australian players highlighted for this World Cup.
And then just to completely curveball it, the best meal that you've eaten while you've been in the USA, please.
So I had this like 2.6 kilo tomahawk steak in Dallas, and I had cowboys sitting all around me, and there was cowgirls and all sorts of weird stuff happening. But probably one of the best steaks of my life, and yeah, definitely a high moment for the meal. Have I had too many burgers here? Yes. Am I missing a nice home cooked meal? Yes. But yeah, that steak was pretty good.
Korf, coming from the land of steaks. Everyone says Australian steaks are the best in the world, but coming from Texas, I don't think maybe you can't beat a Texan steak. I don't know. Well, that's all we've got time for Tunnel Vision this week. Thank you very much, David Scarcella in the USA, in New York. I'm Adam Connor-Bourne. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Cheers, Dave.
See you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. See you later on. Bye.